Okay, in the last video we talked about basic tab navigation, and we talked about how when you had a basic navigation, whatever was in your underscore app layout.tsx would be rendered when you loaded the app, and we just had a basic slot. And so what that does is it defaults to the child, which in that case was the tabs folder. However, in this next example we're going to look at, we are going to see an example where there is more than just the tabs folder, so we can see more things load. All right, let's start by looking at the code, and then we'll come back to take a look at the notes. So if we take a look at this example that I have here, this is the nested nav pass data app. And if you look at the file structure, you will see that in here in the app folder, we have both an index and a layout underscore tsx. And the layout tsx file just has a basic slot. And so like we just saw, when you have a basic slot, what that's going to do is that's going to find your child element. And within our app file folder, if you have something called index, that is considered your child. So here in this index file, what we see is that we are going to go ahead and we are going to load this header, and then we have some text fields and we have a button, and that's what we see right here. And within this file, if I try to hit continue before I've entered my information, it's going to prompt me to do so, and that's because of the function that I have that's being called in the onPress. And what this function is saying is if the name and the activity are empty, then prompt the user with an alert. Otherwise, we can go ahead and we can push the path name of tabs. And so what that means is if those values are filled in, then we are going to go into tabs and we are going to go to that underscore layout tsx with the parameters for name and activity. So let me go ahead and let's fill in my name. So I'm going to say Mrs. Dana, and my activity. I mean, I love lots of things, but right now I'll just say teaching CS and then continue. And then within here, this now takes me into my tabs folder. So within my tabs folder, I have my underscore layout tsx. And like we just talked about a minute ago in the tab layout lesson, we have the tabs directory or tag, which tells me all about the different coloring that I see right here, which is the same that I used in the last example. And then I have each of these screens. So I have a screen for index and family and school. Now, something that is different that I didn't have before is within here, I am using this use local search params. And what this does is this gets the data that I passed in when I was in this layout. So in here, I basically said I was going to push the path name of tabs, which is what I see here, with the params of name and activity. And name and activity were state variables that were defined in index. And when I'm inside here, I am saying use local search params. And what this does is this retrieves my past data. And then now I am using what's called a use effect. And what use effect does is this is going to keep track of the values for name and activity. And if name and activity change, I'm going to update what I see here. Now, for the sake of this current app, there's not a whole lot, like I don't really have the ability to change name and activity, but let's just say I did. Let's say the app that I was making had the ability to log out, and if I logged out, then my name would be unknown. Well, in that case, then I wouldn't want to still see my app here. I would want to have the app go back to my home screen. And so that's what the use effect does for us. Now, the other thing that I want you to be aware of is this property initial params. So initial params are being sent to the home page and also to my school page. And so because of that, these pages know what those values are. So that's why when I'm on my home page, it says Mrs. Dennis home. And when I go to my school page, it actually has my activity listed up here in the header. And then I also have it listed in the body text. Now on my family page here, this one also accesses my value, but because I didn't pass it as initial params, the page can't access it. So what you'll notice here is that in my header title, so the header title says name plus apostrophe S family. So that's why it says Mrs. Dana's family. However, inside this page where it says Dana family, that was hard coded because I didn't pass that in. On the other hand, when I'm on my school page, this right here says teaching CS in the header, and then this teaching CS is actually inside the page code. So I want to show you how that looks. So if I look at the school page, for example, I can see that I start out by getting the local params right here. And then in my actual page code, I incorporated that value into what I see here. And I can only do that because I passed it using those initial params. If I wouldn't have done that in my layout, if I wouldn't have done this right here, it would have told me that it did not know what I was talking about when I tried doing this line where I said use local search params. All right, so hopefully this was helpful for you to understand a couple things. For starters, the way that our overall app is laid out. I have my app folder here, and then within my app folder, I have app, which is the different pages for my screen, for my app itself. Anything with that underscore layout.tsx, that's going to describe the layout that I want to show. If it's inside this under parentheses tabs folder, that is the layout for the tabs as well as the different files that will be shown in the tabs. And then these other folders for like components and styles, that's just describing custom components that I have within my app. All right, let me just make sure I've covered everything. Let's see. So to summarize, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, the use effect is set up so that way whenever those variables that I have in the use effect are updated, the page will update. So if they change, meaning like if somebody were to sign out or something, then the app would route me back to that initial like entry screen. And then here in terms of when we should use initial params and when we shouldn't. Well, if we want our app to be able to access those values that were used on entry in multiple places, then we should pass them as initial params. If we don't care for them to be updated, then we can just not pass them. And if we want to learn more, I have another link here which will take you into more React Native documentation for navigation. And just to show you what this page looks like here, there are tons of pieces of information that you can dive into. So depending on what you want to learn about. All right, I hope that was helpful and good luck with building your apps.